Hi, welcome to Bent TV. I'm Matthew Wade. I'm the editor of the Star Observer. Joining me today to talk about rubber in all its glory is Liam Clark, so Melbourne's inaugural rubber title holder. Welcome, Liam.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
So I thought basically today we could chat a little bit about the rubber community, what it means to you, how you got involved. And I imagine a lot of people within and outside of the community might have never even engaged with rubber or leather or anything like that before. So how would you describe rubber in terms of it being a fetish?
It's a variety, I guess, of enjoyment coming from a vast array of tactile sensations, which I guess is a very flowery way of saying I interact with it and it turns me on.
And so that's your experience with it, but like that rubber just more broadly as a fetish, this isn't like a novel thing, right? Like people have been interested in like rubber and leather and different things like this for a long time.
Don't know enough to know where it sort of started from, but I know as far back as the 80s, 90s, I guess a lot of it with fashion from the raver movements, people were wearing it out and enjoying it as a fashion, and I guess inevitably that kind of leads to people incorporating it into a fetish.
And has it been, I guess, just to clarify, like a fetish that's part of like a queer subculture, or has it been across sexuality spectrums? Like, is it kind of something that anyone can has been interested in, I guess?
It's definitely everywhere.
Yeah.
I think queer people are a little bit better at flying their freak flag, if you will.
Because they've lived lives that have meant they've had to be accustomed to kind of, you know.
Yeah, and we sort of have permission to exist outside the norm, so we're allowed to be a little more fun and free. I think sometimes, well, there's less societal pressure to conform to a heteronormative ideal. But yeah, I know lots of straight people who are into it. More women than men, I think.
That's interesting, yeah.
And particularly when you're looking at rubber in a broader sense, unless you're looking at something that's created by and or for gay men or queer men, it does tend to be overwhelmingly female focused. But I know some straight guys and pan guys who are into it. There's pansexual events that happen in Melbourne as well.
So then the fetish, I mean, people's interest in latex and rubber, and much like your own, you're saying that it kind of stems more broadly from just, I guess, the feeling that you get from engaging with it. I mean, obviously, actually, I should point this out now. You're wearing an amazing rubber outfit at the moment, head to toe. Is it about the sensation of wearing rubber, or is it about touching it yourself, or like what? I mean, where does the pleasure get derived from?
For me, it's all of the above. The way it looks, the way it feels, even the way it smells, and like when you're putting it on, the way it sounds, like the rustly noise that the latex makes. All of that does it for me. Like wearing it myself, feeling someone else in it, it's all good for me. I enjoy it all very much.
I think that's really fascinating and important to note, because I think for some people that maybe have never engaged in fetishes, quote unquote, they might not have any idea what it actually means to someone that is interested in A, B, or C. So you describing kind of how it makes you feel, and just even the smell of it, the touch of it, wearing it, I think is really important.
That being said, it's not all things for all people.
Yep.
I think I know a lot of people, they just like the way they look in it. So I guess, sexual energy they get from it is from the way they look and the way that they imagine that they look.
So it's aesthetic, like it makes them feel like they look maybe powerful or sexy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think it's everything for everyone.
I'm curious to know how you got to this point. So like, can you remember when you were younger, or even if it was maybe a more recent discovery, when you first started to find that, you know, you liked engaging with rubber more than the average person who might just use it for other reasons? Yeah. It
was definitely a thing that happened before I could understand what it meant. I'm pretty sure I was about 8 when I found a pair of chemical-resistant, thick latex gloves in my dad's shed. And I remember stealing them and like getting in what is a very, you know, prepubescent idea of being aroused, I guess. I was very excited by these gloves, and I had no idea where they went, but I remember being fascinated by them for a very long time. That was definitely the start. The second thing I can point out was Katie Underwood and Bardo.
Oh my goodness, and I'm not even a rubber enthusiast, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
That purple cat suit in the Poison film clip.
And she's queer as well. I mean,
yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I actually met her a few years ago and told her that she
Wow.
was responsible for this, and she said she was proud for corrupting me.
Just in case anyone's not familiar with the amazing work of Australia's greatest pop group, Bardo, their debut single, I think it was Poison, in the music video Katie Underwood wore, similar to yourself, like a full body latex suit. What do you? I mean, what?
A catsuit.
Catsuit,
Sleeveless
yeah.
catsuit.
And it did look amazing. I remember
Yeah.
that as well. I mean, I was pretty aware that I was gay at that stage, but
Yep.
even then I was a bit like, ooh, like,
Yeah.
something about that is quite, yeah.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, I got the internet and had parents who were very trusting and did not know how to use a computer. So I had complete unrestricted internet access.
Well, as I was going to say, was it the internet then that catapulted it from being like, oh, I know that I'm kind of excited and interested by this, but I'm not sure what it means, and then the internet kind of filled in the gaps.
Yeah, it turned into a tangible, oh, this is something that I'm interested in. And then that continued on until I was about 20, just after I'd moved to Melbourne. And then I met somebody online who was interested in it, and they put me in it for the first time. And that's when it became oh yeah, this is a thing.
These days, for example, obviously now you're out and proud, you're a rubber enthusiast, you love it as a fetish. What generally inspires you to don it, or is it just kind of no? You're like, it's just part of your, every week you might, depending on an event.
For me, it's definitely more of a multiplayer activity.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not like having a sexual encounter, I still kind of, I don't know, maybe it's like a little bit of an exhibitionist thing that's like emerging out of me. I kind of like need somebody to be around to enjoy it.
So if you're by yourself, you won't necessarily get the same thing that you'll get from it if you weren't as opposed to being in, at a bar or at a rubber event.
It's like I like cooking, but I rarely cook unless I'm cooking for someone else as well.
That's that's an interesting way of putting it. So I guess these days, when you're going to events and rubber, like part of the pleasure and excitement you derive from it is the fact that you're surrounded by other people that are also maybe wearing latex.
Yeah. I grew up, I guess, fairly insecure. I was, weird and gay in the country. So I guess like the opposite shot of that is I get turned on by the idea that people are turned on by me, which I guess is possibly a horribly narcissistic thing to think, but I mean, I guess it works.
So I'm sitting here with Melbourne's inaugural Rubble title holder. What I really would love to talk about is the fact that in 2016 you took out the sash for the very first Melbourne Rubbermen competition that was held. Well, first of all, did you sign up all guns a-blazing, like, I can't wait to be a part of this, or were you nervous? Because I guess, I mean, even though obviously I imagine that stage you were well aware of your rubber interest, that's like a big platform. You're going to be in front of crowds and trying to compete to be like the Rubberman. So what was it like heading into it?
In 2015, as part of my master's degree in journalism, I did a story on the leather competition here in Melbourne.
Yes.
And I like leather too. It's like a secondary fetish of mine. And it looked hella fun.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is the closest thing that any of us are ever going to get to being in like a beauty pageant.
Yeah.
And I do love watching me some Miss Universe, so I was like, oh my God, this looks like so much fun. I would love to enter that next year. I won't win. They've got no chance of winning, but it looks like it'd be really fun. And then I sort of like started talking about the fact that I'd like to enter. And then one of the owners of the Laird was like, yeah, cool, but they're doing a rubber one next year. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, I could possibly win that one. Like it sort of went from like a fun adventure to a fun adventure that could lead on to a further fun adventure.
And so then when you were like, yep, this is my calling, I need to be a part of this competition, for someone that maybe has never been to either a Mr. Leather competition or a Mr. Rubber competition, what was the competition like? I mean, is it very much like what people would expect, like very kind of pageanty, like people, sorry, you can explain.
Okay, so I kept getting told that I wasn't allowed to call it a pageant, but it's a pageant. It's so a pageant.
Yeah.
I mean, there was like a formal round. There was basically a swimsuit round.
What is the equivalent in the rubber world of the swimsuit round? Like, what did you have to?
So in the local competition, it was the flesh round, in which I did actually go out in a rubber Speedo.
Wow.
And I'd like wet my hair backstage, and I had like a swim cap and goggles and a towel, and went out as if I'd just gotten out of the pool. Because I used to swim competitively. At one point, I was Northeast Victorian breaststroke champion.
Oh my goodness, you're kind of marrying like your two. This
Right,
is like,
right.
Yeah, I love that.
So I thought it would be fun to like go with that, and then I just strutted around like the homo who'd watched way too much RuPaul's Drag Race that I am.
Hey, it paid off. I mean, you won.
Right.
And so when you found out that you were Melbourne's very first Rubberman, I guess having developed into this massive rubber enthusiast, like as you mentioned, back from when you were 8 years old and first kind of wondering where is this excitement coming from,
Yep.
to actually holding a sash that says you are Melbourne's very first Rubberman. What was that like? I mean, to be the first one and for it to be openly celebrated in an event like that.
I'd always been sort of kind of a periphery person in the community, I think, and even throughout life, like in school, I was very quiet and unassuming, and I've always kind of just been like a background player. So it was weird for the first time that I was in the spotlight. It took a long time to get used to, but mostly it was just really fun. Everyone was really excited, and I knew at some point my family was going to find out about all of this. And I knew that was going to be some awkward conversations because no one wants to talk about what kind of sex you have with your parents. So I was a little bit terrified of that conversation emerging, but this gave me a context for my parents and family to find out what I was into and for them to think of something fun.
So rather than just kind of out of nowhere being like, by the way, I really am into rubber, you could be like, well, look what I've competed in this thing.
I'm a pageant queen now.
Yeah, how did it go, like when you told your family about it and the wider world?
I had like maybe a couple of friends from high school who were fairly conservative delete me from Facebook, but I hadn't spoken to them in years. Yeah, my parents and family ranged from incredibly supportive to finding it hilarious, which is definitely a realm I'm happy with, and in most cases supportive and finding it hilarious.
It's serious in the sense that these are people's passions and interests and fetishes, but it's fun as well, right? Like part of like being a part of the community and wearing the clothes and kind of engaging with it, it's supposed to be like it's enjoyable. It's supposed to be kind of fun as well.
Yeah, for me, definitely it is. I mean, I know some people take it a lot more seriously, and that's definitely their prerogative. But I'm under no illusions of the fact that I am a pageant queen who won a pageant for guys into sexy dress-ups.
No, I love it. I think it's amazing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, so it's just sort of like makes me feel like an augmented version of myself.
Following your win in 2016, what happened like in the years since then in terms of the rubber community holding the title?
The rubber community in Melbourne was there, and the Laird has always sort of been there, and it's sort of like our focal point, I guess. But after I won, it sort of was a catalyst. I mean, I can't say that it was because of me. I can't say that I did anything specific, but because this had happened, it brought a lot of guys out and into the bar more often and
feeling
into
more
the community.
Comfortable being a part of it.
Yeah. Also, the Laird and like fetish community in general tends to have a bit of a reputation of being like for muscular, fit dudes, and Melbourne loves a beard. So I think all of a sudden having a poster boy that was weird and lanky and geeky and hairless suddenly made a lot more people realize that they were welcome in the fetish community and at places like the Laird.
And that's the thing as well. I think people that haven't, within and outside of the community, who haven't necessarily engaged with fetishes before or communities around a certain fetish, they might have these preconceived ideas about a person has to look like this to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, I mean, people might not necessarily, when they're thinking of someone that's into latex and rubber, look at you immediately and think that's the kind of look that's who I would think would be naturally a part of that. So I think it's really great for representation. Because
and particularly since after I won, there's been 2 more title holders. John Cheshire, who this year I think turns 60.
Wow.
And is also pan. And Matthew Shepherd, who is quintessential ginger bear.
Yeah.
I think each of us have shown a different side of what a Rubberman is, and in that it can be anyone.
And you also, correct me if I'm wrong, past the Melbourne title that you took, went and competed internationally.
Yes.
Which I imagine was kind of like a larger scale version of what you did in Melbourne.
Yeah, it was really intense. I'd never been to a fetish event bigger than one at the Laird. And then all of a sudden, I was on the international stage, and I was pretty convinced that I was going to come 5th. There were 9 of us competing, and I was like, I'm probably going to be somewhere in the middle.
Like a safe spot, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I always like my biggest fear was coming 8th, because if I did bad, I wanted to at least be memorably bad.
Like yeah.
But
the
like,
Miss Vanjie effect when you're the
exactly.
first one out.
Yeah. I wanted to like bomb it really hard and then come home and go, whoops. But if I like did 7th or 8th, it'd just be like, oh, you were like bad, but not memorably bad.
So then where did you place in the end?
I came 2nd.
Wow.
the Damium of rubber.
That's good.
Yeah, I was blown away. I had no idea this was coming until just before we went out for the final podium call, when my mum sent me a screenshot of like the live chat from the stream that she was watching, and she was like, everyone thinks you're going to win.
Wow.
And I was like, what? I'm actually in with a shot here?
Wow.
Oh God.
That's incredible. And also because I imagine that, have there been any Australian rubber, like because you were the inaugural sash holder, so were you the first Australian to go over and compete?
There had been an Australian previously, but I was the first, he was representing I think somewhere in the UK.
Right.
I was the first Australian to compete representing Australia, and definitely the first with a title.
And coming up later this year, you'll be revisiting the US for the International Rubber title, the International Rubber competition, is that right?
Yes, due to the fact that I'm now one of the main organisers of the rubber event and the title, working from a backstage component, I've been invited to judge Mr International Rubber this year, so I will be in the same room, just on the other side of the table.
Amazing. It'll be a very different experience, but also like incredible, because again, it's validating and affirming something that you're excited and it makes you really happy. So to kind of be able to not only celebrate it here in Melbourne, but go overseas on this big stage and kind of, have it embraced the way that it is, I think is amazing.
Yeah, it's just so mind-boggling that a nerd from Albury Wodonga who likes playing sexy dress-ups can somehow be internationally recognized for it. It just blows my mind.
Well, that's now what I wanted to touch on a bit. So in case you're just joining us now, I'm here with Liam Clark, who is Melbourne's inaugural rubber title holder. Melbourne's rubber community, you mentioned a bit earlier that after the first rubber competition that you won, people felt a bit more, I guess, empowered and enabled like to get out into the bar and kind of embrace that a bit more. So what is Melbourne's rubber community like? For someone that's maybe never entered it before and has never had any exposure to it, what is the Melbourne scene like?
I guess it's a diverse group of groups, potentially. The one that I guess I most specifically represent is the Melbourne Rubbermen, which is a loose community based on a Facebook group of guys into rubber of very mixed ages. We've got some members who are still like 18, 19, and then there's members in their 60s.
Wow.
Most of us, I think, tend to be 20s, 30s, 40s though. And we organize social group events and just go out and have fun. We're definitely a queer subsect of the rubber community, but there's definitely broader people out there who aren't part of our group.
I know you mentioned earlier that it kind of crosses sexuality lines, like a lot of people can be interested in rubber, and actually a lot of women as well. But I guess for yourself being queer, how does it feel to have a space that you can not only be queer and safe and comfortable, but also express that? Because I imagine that there are a lot of people even within the queer community that have never even thought about, fetishes or rubber in particular. So how does it feel to be able to, I guess, bring those two identities together and feel comfortable and safe and, celebrated?
I mean, I'm going to be cliche here and say it's liberating. I don't know that I was ever super comfortable with people beforehand. I've always felt like I've got a dirty, dark secret that I haven't really been able to share with people, but now everything's on the table. Yeah. Everyone generally knows everything about me, and if they don't, they just need to look at my Instagram. So it doesn't feel like I have to hide anything of myself anymore. And the fact that I've got a group of people and a space in the community, like a physical space, where I can just revel in what I like and who I am. It's liberating. It's so liberating. And
I know you said that since you won the sash, there have been a couple of more people that have taken it out in the consecutive years. Is there a competition coming up this year for?
Yeah, there is. During Slick Melbourne Rubber Week, which is the 3rd to the 7th of July. Our Melbourne Rubberman competition is on the 5th, which is a Friday night. We'll be held at the Laird Hotel once again. It's going to be exciting. We've got a really star-studded lineup of judges this year, and I can't believe I managed to get some of them. I can't say who they are right now.
Still under embargoed.
Yes, but there's some. If you're a rubber person in Melbourne, you will know a bunch of them.
Okay.
And they're like, and they're not all local either.
And
they're just like big names.
This week-long, I guess, handful of events under Slick.
Yeah.
It's beyond just the competition as well. You're saying
Yeah.
it'll be
So there's like a welcome reception. Local homosexual Dinar Curie, familiar to all, is hosting a rubber-themed version of Trivial Hirsute.
Oh, great! Yeah.
Called Trivial Rub Suit. And we're going to have some workshops. We're doing a cocktail party.
I think it's really important and amazing that Melbourne has a space for people that are interested in rubber and also leather as well. I know there are places that probably, there might be somebody like you when you were younger that just don't have an outlet like that. I mean, obviously we have the internet now, but I guess for anyone that has ever considered that they might have some sort of fetish rubber, or is even just interested in, meeting a new community and being a part of it, what would you say to them?
If you're a queer male, a queer identified male identified, head down to the Laird on a Thursday night. We have a fetish night that happens regardless. So I think that's really where Melbourne gets lucky, that no specific group has to organise it. There's no egos at play. This night just happens there every Thursday regardless.
And it's not some scary kind of, foreboding.
No, like a lot of people think that it's a scary place, but it's a pub. That's all it is. It's a pub. So if you turn up there a little bit earlier on in the night, you can hang out in the beer garden and just chat to people before the night really gets anything more than, well, before it gets busy.
Yeah.
And you can ask somebody some questions.
A little bit about what it's like being a part of the community, what they need. Yeah.
Exactly. If you're not male identified, there's a event every month called Provocation, which I think you can find on the website for OzKinkFest, and that's a pansexual event. It's not too heavy either. It's mostly just a sort of drinks and socializing thing.
But it's a way to kind of feel comfortable and relaxed, and you can meet new people and feel like a part of something kind of quite special, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I've been there a few times, and there were definitely people there who weren't in gear, who were just sort of, more on the kink end of the spectrum, but it's a sort of anything goes social thing. And then from there, you can go into whatever you want.
Well, you've heard it. That's as good a plug as I could ever imagine. So if anyone's interested in finding out more about the rubber community or even being a part of it or meeting people, then the Laird is obviously a great venue, as you mentioned. There are events coming up. So I just wanted to thank you again for coming and chatting with me today, Liam. So this is Liam Clark, Melbourne's very first Melbourne Rubberman inaugural title holder. I didn't say that very well. But yeah, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for joining us on Bent TV.